Welcome to the Birding Life podcast. My name is Adam, and I'm your host on the podcast where we discover birds and the birders that pursue them. The Birding Life is proud to be associated with Swarovski Optic, one of the world's leading producers of binoculars, monoculars, and spotting scopes, as well as the Bird Lasser bird logging app. Spot, plot, play a part. Download and install the app to play your part in social conservation. The Birding Life is a lot more than just a podcast. It's a multi-platform resource to connect birders with each other, amazing locations, the best resources, and obviously where to find amazing birds. Head on over to our website www.thebirdinglife.com and be sure to sign up to our newsletter on the site so you do not miss out on any of the exciting things that are coming up. Be sure to follow this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to it on, and please take some time to rate and comment on it. This is episode 39, and as 2020 starts to wind down, we have another exciting episode. We just want to thank everyone that has supported us over the course of this year, and we pray that you will all have a blessed Christmas. For today's episode, I'll be handing over the hosting responsibilities to another one of our Birding Life team, Calvin Harris, and he'll be chatting to some guests all about Haas Crows and the challenges that they present. He'll be chatting to guests from KwaZulu Natal as well as a guest all the way from Tanzania. But before I hand over to Calvin, two young birders, Mark Haystack and Justin Ponder, managed to create a twitching storm in South Africa last week as they discovered a mega rare buff-breasted sandpiper in the Cape. Let's listen as they share the story behind the special find.
Hey guys, it's Mark Haystack
and Justin Ponder here.
Today is the 20th of December. This morning we woke up on the edges of Full Flay from our tent and started scanning the mud flats for any plovers or sandpipers.
Yeah, while standing there in the rain, we spotted two very unusual waders waiting on the edge of the pan.
And we took a look at it and thought, that can't be a wood sandpiper, but there's nothing else that we could compare it to. It just looked so unusual. So Justin got a few shots and we had a look at it.
So we just started scrolling through some of the birds on our Roberts app, and then we found the buff-breasted sandpiper, and we thought, no, this is identical.
There was nothing else we could compare it to, but at that moment we didn't want to just send the message out there saying, hey, there's a buff-breasted sandpiper here, come see it. So we sent the image to Trevor Hardacre.
We walked into a bit of a signal area and sent the message. And then his response was, when we got into more signal a bit later, was that they were on their way.
Yeah, so at that moment, the rest of our crew had arrived. So there was a whole lot of high fives going on and loud clapping. So we probably scared another rarity away that was hiding somewhere there. But we spotted our buff-breasted sandpipers, and it was just such a shock. But soon after, we had twitches pitching up from all over the place.
At the one stage, at about 1:30 in the afternoon, we had about 40 birders just standing on the edge of the pan there, watching this pair of buff-breasted sandpipers.
And we reckon there was a total of about 100 people, if not more, but at least 100 who came today. So it was quite a thing to see and witness, as something that I could say.
Yeah, that we were just so proud of ourselves for doing.
Yeah, we were like, what have we done?
Having all these people drive all the way down from Cape Town to see this crazy pair of birds that we've just managed to spot on the edge of the flay.
Yeah. But that is how an ordinary day of birding
turned into one of the biggest twitches of the garden route.
So you never know. Keep an eye out on your next bird outing. You might just find something special.
You never know what might pitch up.
Thanks, Mark and Justin, for sharing that exciting story. If you'd like to hear a little bit more about their story, they were guests on episode 7 of the Youth Birding Podcast. Go check out that episode and hear all about their story. If you have a story that you'd like to share, simply send us a voice note and we will look to include it in the show. We can't wait to hear your story. So now I hand over to Calvin as he chats to today's guests.
Righty, welcome everyone. My name is Calvin Harris from the Birding Life. You may recognize a slightly different voice to what you used to on our regular podcast from Adam. He's taken a break this week where I'm picking up a topic that's quite close to my heart, and I've got two fantastic guests online today. The topic at hand is something that's quite close to my heart after spending a brief vacation on Zanzibar Island in December 2019, I was struck and absolutely bemused by the amount of house crows that I saw, not only at the resort that I was staying at the northern point of Zanzibar in the Nungwi area, but all throughout the island and the surrounding islands as well. And I witnessed firsthand what destruction this alien invasive species can cause. And in doing so, I met up with the local bird guide, Andrew Majembe, which you're going to hear from a little bit later after this initial discussion about what we've got together and what we started doing, and possibly how you as a listener can get involved in trying to control the species. So I'm not the expert. I've got two fantastic experts online with me today. And just a brief introduction of the two gentlemen that I have online with me today is, first of all, we're going to start off with Mr. Phumulani Hlongwane, who's an alien invasive species monitor for Wild Trust, who are in partnership with Ezemvelo KZN Wildlife. In terms of his background, he's got a bachelor's degree in environmental management from CPUT down in Cape Town, and has worked in the space of nature conservation for a number of years. He started as a National Research Foundation intern based in Ezemvelo KZN Wildlife before moving across to Wild Trust. During this time, he's been dealing with a range of alien invasive species throughout KwaZulu Natal and has a strong focus on house crows. My second guest today is Mr. Ian Rushworth. He's a scientific manager at Ezemvelo KZN Wildlife, the provincial conservation authority for the province of KwaZulu Natal in South Africa. In terms of his background, he's got a master's degree in conservation biology from the University of Cape Town and has worked in formal nature conservation in KwaZulu Natal for 28 years, going on more than that. During this time, he's been responsible primarily for providing scientific advice for the development of conservation strategies and management plans, and direct decision support for protected area management. As alien invasive species are such a major threat to biodiversity and livelihoods across the globe, he's increasingly become involved in local, provincial, and national strategies to manage their impacts, and is involved in a number of advisory bodies and forums relating to alien invasive species. So that's quite a mouthful, gentlemen. I don't think my bio would be anything similar to that. But I want to welcome you onto the Birding Eye podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedules. The work that you both are involved in is heavily important. And I'd just like to welcome you on the show.
Thanks so much, Calvin, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you and Phumulani.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Calvin.
Only a pleasure. Okay, so I think I'm going to jump straight into some of the meaty questions that we've got on the show here. So if you can start off by, Ian, I'll bring you in here first. If you can start by telling the public about this house crow project that you're involved in and why it's so important.
Great, thanks, Calvin. So for those that aren't aware, the house crow is a type of crow from the Indian subcontinent that is now spread widely across the world and invaded many, many different countries. So there's at least 24 different countries across the world where the species has invaded, and probably an equal number where it has arrived but not yet reached large numbers. And so it's one of these very smart birds, and it's also sort of commensal with man. It's very used to living with people and unafraid of them, and actually chooses to live in sort of urban areas. So basically, with the increase in trade around the world, it's become a bit of a stowaway on ships, either just getting on the ship and then it jumps off at the next port. And so around the world, it's invading sort of coastal habitats. And when it gets there, it causes a lot of problems. So in particular, biodiversity-related problems. So for those that are interested in birds, it's a massive risk to small birds in particular. It either kills them or raids the nests. And there's been a number of documented cases where it's had huge impacts on local bird populations. It also, because they get together in big groups and they're quite aggressive, they can even displace larger predators like owls and eagles. We had a report recently from KwaZulu Natal here in South Africa of a group of crows attacking a secretary bird, which is quite a large predatory bird. So they can have a big impact on bird populations. They can have a big impact on small mammals, reptiles, amphibians, and so on. But in addition to those biodiversity issues, there's a whole range of sort of social and community and economic impacts that they have also. And, Phumulani would probably be in a better place to talk about that. Because of those issues, we need to then try and manage these impacts and reduce their invasion around the world.
So that's quite interesting. So you say that the spread of the species is purely based on man's movement around the world through trade and the like. Has there been any sort of natural spread outside of you mentioned, I think, that they originate from the east or Asia. Have they not sort of naturally distributed throughout Europe or anything like that?
No, look, there's possibly some local level spread in the Indian subcontinent. So India, Pakistan, Myanmar, those sort of areas is natural range. You probably find there has been some level of spread, as humans have come to dominate the landscape more and create more suitable habitat for them. There's probably been some limited amount of sort of moving between cities and towns, but most of the movement has been via ships and across continents. So there's no ways a bird could get from where their natural range is to South America or North America or to Australia or to the southern tip of Africa. So all of those have been via human interventions. Most of it probably sort of accidental, with birds getting on ships, and then the ship sails off, and then when they see land, when the ship gets too close to its destination, they fly off the ship and establish on the land. In some cases, people have taken them as pets, and I think there's occasionally instances where, and I think Zanzibar may have been one of them, where they were deliberately introduced to try and sort out another problem. But most of it, you'd say the majority of their movement around the world is directly and indirectly related to the activities of man. So it's not a natural sort of range expansion.
And I know we're going to touch on it a little bit later, but just for the listeners, how long has this been a problem, or how long have Haas Crow been a problem, not only in KZN, but in South Africa in particular?
So in South Africa, the first record was from 1972. So, time flies, but so that's nearly 50 years ago. So that was from Durban. And again, like we're seeing in the rest of the world, it arrived at the harbour port first, and then it established there. Then in the 1980s, they arrived in Cape Town, and then probably in the mid to late 2000s, sort of in the Richards Bay area. So those were sort of the first three known established populations. But since then, they've subsequently spread further inland in both the Western Cape and in KwaZulu Natal, and there are sightings now in the Eastern Cape province also. And in that time, they've also established now at Walvis Bay in Namibia, and there's a very healthy population at Maputo and further up the coast in Mozambique.
Yeah, so we are getting pockets popping up. Now, Phumulani, I understand that you are very involved in the project from a local community level. Can you perhaps just tell the listeners about your day-to-day involvement in the project and some of the impacts you've experienced in the community from the Haas Crow?
Oh, thank you so much, Kelvin. So basically what I am doing, I started with, going out on a day-to-day basis to look for them. And we had an understanding that I think around 2016, in a small township called Eskhawini here in KwaZulu Natal, they were reported as there was a success in terms of eradicating them, because there was nothing that was reported in 2016. But come 2019, when I went there to do some survey, and I found a huge number of them in around Eskhawini. So what I would do, I would just GPS the coordinates of where I saw the birds, and also, but most importantly, what we are looking for is the nesting site and the roosting site, because they tend to treat these two sites differently. So we would GPS those, because as part of trying to maintain the population, since we are still trying to formulate a way or a strategy in trying to dealing with them. So I was, on a day-to-day basis, I would go out and try to take down the nests of these house crows, because in trying to ensure that the population doesn't explode. But also I would interview the communities about the feelings of them having these birds in their community, and also do some sort of awareness the impact that these birds have on the environment, also on their health, because they also pose some threat, and they do have some health issues that they come with. So I would go out on a day-to-day basis and trying to do that.
I think that's very interesting. One of the things, as I mentioned, we're going to hear from Andrew a little bit later in his segment from the Haas Crow in Zanzibar. But one of his big frustrations was to try and get the local community to realize that house crows do pose an actual health threat to you. A lot of people, who perhaps don't have quite an understanding of birds, or perhaps don't live in the area where they see them, that they just simply see them, they're a bit of a nuisance bird. They might steal a bit of scrap food off your plate if you're at a resort, for example. But people don't seem to realize that they do carry diseases. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on that, and what are the kind of diseases that house crows might carry, or some of the actual harm that they might inflict?
So for human beings, I know that they carry a bacteria that causes salmonella to human beings, but also they carry a bacteria here in South Africa. It causes a disease called Newcastle for the chickens. So it does have those small, health issues.
Okay, all right, perfect. And again, just speaking to the locals in the community, because I think that this is the most important thing, given how vast our country is, and I know you're speaking about more of a localized area in KwaZulu Natal, but we want to educate as many people as possible. Are those people in the community, are they aware of house crows? Have they taken note of them? I mean, you mentioned that they do cause a bit of disturbance, but to the average person walking on the street, does he look at a house crow and see that as a nuisance?
I would say, because when I first arrived and the community, because I engaged with the local structures, and when the community members, they kept on seeing me, looking at these birds, looking for their nest. They engaged. They came to me trying to engage and trying to find out what am I exactly doing. So I explained to them that actually I'm dealing with this bird called a house crow. And they said, these blackish ones. And I said, yes. So they said, we really don't know where do these birds come from, because when we grew up, we didn't have these birds. And suddenly we have a number of them, and we don't know where do they come from. And we don't want them here. And they all sing in one voice in terms of these birds, them, don't wanting those birds in their environment. So, and I was happy to see that our people, they see when their environment is changing. So that is why we are very much involved in trying to ensure that we try to deal with this problem as soon as possible.
Okay, that's really interesting that they've picked up on the change of the demographic, and as Ian was saying earlier, that's kind of only been in the last 50, probably less years, in more inland at least. And for those listeners who perhaps aren't within the borders of South Africa, we do have a local crow species which we call it's a pied crow, which is it's a black and white crow, and it has a very distinct white breast and I think white rump. I just don't have a picture in front of me right now. But there is a very big distinction between a house crow and our local pied crow, not only from a size but a coloration point of view. So that's really interesting to hear. I'm going to bring you back in here. Alien invasive species control, or animal rights at least around the world is always a very hot topic. What would you say to someone that believes that no animal should be harmed, no matter whether man has introduced it to the local area or not? I mean, surely you've encountered this sort of resistance, if I can say that. And what would your response be to that?
It's interesting, the human response to some of these things. So when we talk about controlling alien plants, generally people are quite comfortable with that. Once we start talking about controlling or managing alien animals, we tend to just naturally have more an affinity for them. So we do get concerned about animals and harm to them. And I guess, that's quite a good thing that people do have this affinity for animals, because we need to look after the natural world. But, what people don't always understand is the impact of allowing these invasions to continue. And perhaps what Phumulani could have emphasized more is, some of these sort of social and economic impacts. So in that same area where he's working, local people who rely a lot on poultry for their own food, they raise their own chickens. These crows eat the eggs, they eat the chicks, and they outcompete the adults for food. So in places like Tanzania, you've had sometimes like a 50 to 60% decline in the amount of poultry that's available for people. So in poor countries in Africa, you're talking about a real social problem and food security actually that's affected. They also eat a lot of the crops and the fruit that people try and grow. Phumulani was telling me about another example of a school where the headmaster is complaining like anything about these crows because it's disrupting the classes. The teachers have to speak louder to be heard. The children are being distracted. The playgrounds are being messed up with all of the crow poop. So, you've got these very real socio-economic impacts that happen. So at the end of the day, we've got to consider that. And then, as I was saying earlier, there's a very big biodiversity impact in terms of other bird species, other reptiles, amphibians, mammals, and so on. So given that man has caused this problem, unfortunately, we've got to try and sort of manage that problem. Whenever control measures are considered, all of the ethical issues are looked at very carefully, and we normally have ethics committees that look into this to make sure that the most humane methods possible are used. So you start looking at non-lethal methods to try and either discourage them or reduce their breeding, that type of thing. But if we have to end up actually controlling or killing birds, then it has to be signed off by the relevant authorities to make sure that the people doing it are properly trained, so it's done in the most ethical and most humane manner. So we're very conscious to the need to do that. But if we don't do it, well, let me just take a step back. With alien invasions, you have a very short window of opportunity to actually make a difference. And so if we let the numbers get beyond a certain level, then we will lose any opportunity to ever control the numbers. And that means that in perpetuity, forever from now onwards, those ecosystems will be changed. Those impacts will be there for future generations. And so we have to take those tough decisions as early as possible in the invasion process and aim to sort of control those numbers or eradicate the species.
Oh, that's really interesting, because I think a lot of people, like you said, if it's an alien invasive plant, or everyone, let me say this again, nobody likes rats. So whenever someone sees a rat, they can very quickly identify that it's vermin and that it shouldn't be there. But not necessarily everyone might look at a bird and think that it could be such a problem, at least for the ones and twos. I've certainly, just in my sort of birding in and around the Durban area, I've started to notice a slight increase of house crows around, certainly around the Mgani River area, then towards, going towards the harbour as well. So as you say before, if these little sort of eruptions, if I can say that, aren't kept in check, can very quickly spread to a situation which I promise you nobody wants to see.
Yeah, I was so interested in your comment about Zanzibar and all the impacts in Zanzibar, because that's a bit of a glimpse into the future for South Africa. It's actually a huge menace to people and the environment. And yeah, it's quite easy when there's low numbers for people to say, well, what you worried about? I'm not seeing any impact. It's not affecting me. But, as scientists, not even as scientists, but if you could look at other situations where they've established, you could start anticipating the types of impacts that we'll have if we don't intervene now. And Phumulani was telling me about another paper he read where actually airports have had to close because these birds become a collision risk for aircraft, and so that's how it gets to, because these things form massive flocks that really get together. They make a huge amount of noise, but when you get a big flock like that flying in front of an aircraft, it becomes a massive risk, and Yeah, and as he said, I wasn't aware of the study until he pointed it out to me recently. But they literally actually had to close an airport or several airports because of this invasion.
Whereabouts was that, Phumulani?
So the study was done in India. So where the aviation companies, they ended up pulling out because they spent more money in repairing the flight engines than, getting some profit, because these birds, the way they would collide with these airplanes, and then they will be sucked in the engines. So the lifespan of an engine will end up, being cut into half. So they will have to resurface the engine more regularly than the engine. The flight itself should be on air making money. So a lot of aviation companies, they ended up pulling out, and then airports were closed. So these are the issues that we are looking at as Africa, as South Africa, if we don't do anything with these house crows, because we, as Ian has pointed out, that we have an opportunity of doing something now. Because if we don't, we will have those issues that in India, for an example, that they have faced. So we don't want that. We are a developing country. We still want our economy to grow. So we can't be dealing with alien invasive species that target or attack the economy, because in the economy we have also the tourism. But if you have house crows, as Ian again pointed out, that they don't fear people. So tourists, they don't feel comfortable when they would see these birds coming into them, taking their stuff in their hands, attacking them, because they would be trying to defend their nests. So the tourism industry, it can be affected. We've seen that in cities like Mombasa. So we don't want that in South Africa. But also in a country like South Africa, these house crows, since they use wire to construct their nests, so because of the infrastructure we have, our electricity goes via poles. So they would construct a nest in a transformer. So what happens when you short circuit the electricity. So the transformer will burst, and then the money that the municipality should be using for service delivery. So now they have to take that money to repair these transformers. So there is a setback also in service delivery due to these house crows.
I'd love to see a headline one day saying that a municipality is without power because of house crows making nests there. I think that people will not believe that at all. That's amazing. Okay, so I mean, I agree with Ian. I wasn't even aware of that issue at the airport, which is a huge economic impact on the local area. Phumulani, staying with you, for anyone that's listening to this discussion today, and if they might have noticed a house crow in their area and possibly not known how potentially damaging that they would be to their local environment and then to spread as well. What can someone do? How does the average man on the street get involved in this project, or what can they do to support you? Where to from here, for anyone listening to this podcast?
Thank you, Kelvin. So for now, what we suggest and we pledge people to do is to, and because I give my number freely on the flyers that I normally dish out to people when I'm talking to them, it has my number. So people, they can WhatsApp me direct or send an email, because on the pamphlet there is every information about the project. So they can WhatsApp me or report any sighting to their nearest conservation officer that I know that which will end up with us, and we will be the one who will go there and see and confirm whether that's a true sighting, or maybe it was a mistake from other birds, because there is that misidentification of house crows.
Okay, and I'm a regular user of it, but does the Bird Lasser app, does that play any part? I mean, And again, feel free to jump in where applicable. There's a lot of citizen scientists out there. There's a lot of birders that are out in the field, walking around. I know every now and again I'm on a few Facebook groups. Dave Rimmer and a few others are asking for people to post their sightings online about house crows. Is there any sort of partnership that you have with these sort of logging systems or anything like that?
Okay, Calvin, so I'll take this one. So yes, we've worked with BirdLife on this, and so they have encouraged BirdLife and members and other users of the BirdLasser app to report sightings. And what I do is I then download that data from BirdLife periodically, and we update our distribution map for the country. And then we task people to go into those areas where the sightings were reported to confirm that the species is there, and then we can add that to our sort of action plan. So that sort of citizen science type approach using apps and reporting it that way has proved to be very useful. In fact, we've picked up new sites like that we didn't know about, sites that were missed in the South African Bird Atlas project and other surveys that have been done. So it's very, very useful, and we really would encourage all birders, throughout Africa, actually, not just in South Africa, to report sightings using the BirdLasser app. And we will then use that to help understand the rate of spread, to plan new actions, and ultimately to try and solve this problem.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I think for our US-based users, they probably make more use of eBird or anyone else listening around the world. But we do know that BirdLasser is a globally used app, and I'm not saying that Ian's going to hop on a plane and fly around and go look for house crows wherever they may be. But I think the overlying message is wherever you see an alien invasive species outside of it, obviously its normal range, is to log it, make mention of it, raise it with your local environmental officers, like Phumulani was mentioning, your officers in charge at perhaps a reserve. So the more we talk about the species like this, or the more we identify, the more awareness will be raised, so that we can stay on top of the issue and then not get to a situation where they get out of hand. Obviously, your project is being run by Ezemvelo KZN Wildlife. How does someone keep track of latest developments and what's going on with your projects? Ian or Phumulani, feel free to jump in.
At the moment, there is no website or anything like that. So, that's something we would like to look at, to provide resources and make them more easily available for people to see. But at the moment, our focus is on developing a national strategy. So we've been working with the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries to try and get a national strategy adopted. A key part of that strategy would be the communication, with the public and encouraging this sort of citizen science reporting. And so I think coming out of that, hopefully in the next 6 months to a year, we'll have a much clearer mechanism to communicate what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and allowing people to have a much more interactive experience with it. So, I think at the moment it's been pretty much in-house. It's been sort of awareness raising within government, within municipalities. With these things, it's really quite a challenge to make the leap between seeing this as just a biodiversity problem, which many politicians don't really care about, to saying, hold on, this is actually a societal problem. If we don't deal with this is going to cause permanent long-term damage to government's objectives around poverty reduction, increasing tourism and things like that. So a large part of the challenge is to get people to see these things sort of holistically enough, that it's not just seen as a fringe biodiversity thing that the biodiversity people need to worry about.
Jeepers, gentlemen, that you guys have both given us such a fantastic insight to what's going on. Probably a lot of people listening here wouldn't even realize the scale of the problem, that we're not only dealing with KZN, but South Africa and potentially Africa as a whole. Based on what we've covered already, is there anything that you maybe want to leave us with or touch on before we close up?
Yes, I think maybe just one thing to mention is this, potential misidentification with indigenous species. So you mentioned the pied crow earlier, but we also have the Cape crow. Some people remember it as the black crow. Now that's much more similar to the Haas crow. So whereas the Cape crow is a sort of a uniform glossy black color, the Haas crow is slightly smaller and has a sort of a gray-brown neck and breast. So that's the main distinguishing feature. And then secondly, the bill of the house crow is slightly more robust than in the Cape crow. Generally, they use slightly different habitats. Cape crow is more rural areas, whereas the house crow tends to focus more on urban areas. But it's just important to try and minimize the number of false reports we get with people confusing the Cape crow and the house crow. So just encourage people to just take out the bird book, just check for the differences when they're considering reporting sightings. Thanks.
But also, just to add on the social problems that house crows they bring. I mean, in a place like Eskhawini, there are a lot of street vendors, so they end up lose their stock that they are selling to the people due to these house crows because they steal. They even gave them a new name. They call them a thieving bird. And also, people they don't have or get enough sleep due to these house crows because every 3:30 a.m. they would wake up and they would make a huge noise and wake up everybody. So people they complain that they don't have enough sleep due to these birds.
Okay, so obviously the chickens have been replaced by the house crows now, and that's quite a problem. I mean, the life is difficult as it is in rural areas, and now we've got this added element that's contributing to a lot of irritation. And as you say, if street vendors are having their stock being taken away from them, they can't be too chuffed about that, and obviously wanting some sort of impact. Gentlemen, I want to thank you both for your time and the work that you do. I think it's probably, I stand to be corrected here, but it's probably a very thankless job that you guys are involved in. There's not a lot of people that know what you do, and I'm hoping that by giving you a platform like this, and I do encourage other platforms as well to get you on board, to do webinars, workshops, get the word out there as much as possible, because I've seen the impact for myself. And I'm hoping that at least one listener, or maybe two, would have their perspective changed on house crows if they haven't already, and wanting to get involved with you. So I just want to thank you both for your time. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Kevin.
Hi, everyone. So this is Calvin Harris from the Birding Life, and I've got a fantastic guest here today, Mr. Andrew Majembe, who's all the way in Tanzania. He covers Tanzania and Zanzibar in terms of bird tours and wildlife expeditions. And we've got him on here to speak about a special project that him and I have been speaking about and working on behind the scenes since around about December 2019, before the world was taken over by COVID-19. And I'm really excited to have Andrew talk about the project and about himself. So I'll let him introduce himself first and then go on to tell us a little bit more about what he gets up to in Tanzania and the kind of tours that he can offer. So over to you, Andrew. Let's hear it.
Thank you very much. As Kevin has been give a little brief about me, I am a Tanzanian big birder, and I'm covering all the Tanzania wide for bird watching and wildlife safari. The interesting is through these birding and conservation, then we cut across to a very special mark, which is a threat to the bird watching, and that is Indian house crow. To just make it comfortable word, then we have to find some alternative way to control these alien species. Indian house crow was introduced in Tanzania in 1880, and there were only about 50 birds at that time, and they were just brought here by British administration. The idea was just to clean the city of Zanzibar. We understand the house crow are one of the intelligent birds. You can train them to be in a positive in the environment, but remember, by that time when they were just introduced, they just populate. They make a population over and over. At the end, the previous ones, the older ones, they lose the techniques that were be told by that have been trained by the older ones. So the new ones, they start by themselves, then they turn negative to the environment, and they're the ones now they disturb the whole ecosystem, especially in the food chain. When you talk about the biological effect of the Indian house crow, they disturb the bird eggs and the birds themselves, but also to our farms, these chickens farms. You find if you have a free range chicken at home, it come and snatch the chicken away, and we have a lot of cases for them. House crow, there have been also a big problem in the health. We told if you because they spend most of time in the garbages looking for whatever to them as a very special needs. For us, for human being, it's different. So this guy wants to just coming from the garbage and then and come to our open semi tank, they can transmit diseases. We have a lot of evidences and through these birds. So this number of these birds so far, because the environmental planning and management has been relaxed, and these birds take advantage of that angle to breed more and more and more. The last population for this bird, the last estimated population for this bird in 2010, which was the big last attempt before these ones, we are now trying to organize the bigger ones as well. There were about 2 million birds. Now we talk about 10 million birds Tanzania wide. This is heavy and massive number. And through this, that's why it brings a lot of problem around Tanzania wide, especially in the coastal zones. You find that they're more dominating in the coastal zone. And this is now, we say, it's one of the notorious birds that has been disturbing our environment widely, especially and in the bird hotspots.
Well, I can certainly attest to that. I must be honest, although I've been speaking to Andrew for over a year now, I didn't realize that the numbers were so great. And my experience was, when I went on a week-long holiday up to Nongwe, which is the northern tip of Zanzibar, I was astounded at the amount of house crows that I saw there. And that's not even the worst part of the problem in terms of where the greatest concentration of house crows are. Literally, wherever you look, there's a house crow, and the first call that you hear in the morning is a house crow call. It's actually devastating. I'm down here in Durban, which is in KwaZulu Natal in South Africa, and our house crow population, I've noticed in the last year or two, it's starting to grow substantially in and around the coastal areas as well. And I didn't realize that that's such a great habitat for them as well, that their numbers are starting to proliferate. And we are lucky that we're in a place where there was quite a strong house crow control program that was run by the local municipality, and they were quite effective. But that means constant monitoring, not just a once-off hit. And that's exactly what we're seeing now, Andrew. And like you've explained, in 2010, there was quite a concerted effort to control the house crow numbers, but without getting on top of the problem and maintaining them, their numbers have just exploded again. And this is what we've seen. So why don't you, you've told us about their impact on the local environment. Obviously, there's an impact on you from an economic point of view, because you run bird tours on the mainland and on Zanzibar. And if there's no indigenous birds because of the house crows, well, your livelihood is directly affected. And that's a massive problem, not only for you, but I'm sure for many other people that rely on the natural habitat to make their living. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about the ideas that we have around the house crow control project and what successes we've had so far? Because we don't always want to talk about doom and gloom. We want to talk about the strides that you've made in going forward and in helping to control them.
We just went through to check the traps, which is we think they can be appropriate traps to set around the island of Zanzibar, because it seems to be the source is too heavy at the Zanzibar side. But also we were just so smart to remember Zanzibar is just a small area. If you can start a project, you will see the impact so easily than to the mainland side. So so far we just come up with the 2 traps, and we want 600 traps. How do we get all of them? So we are just going to the hotels, the hotel owners, to try to educate about environmental control, plus donating the traps. So the project is on the pipeline. We are just on the setting up. So we wish people from any corner around the world, if they can have a heart touched with what we are doing, it will be super to donate the traps charge, because one trap, it costs about 250 US, just fixing the traps and then setting up the trap at the appropriate sites. We have identified the roosting site and feeding area for these crows, and then we understand now number of areas where these crows are feeding. We understand Zanzibar, it has 6 districts, and we assume at every single district we need 100 traps, which is will be exactly good number for the setting up. And from this, we are sure, and in a very short period of time, we'll be able to collect a good number of trapped crows, and then regulate the number at the last, make them be controlled.
Yeah. So that's a very, very good point. And what we obviously want to do is that these are still creatures, and we want to dispose of these crows in the most humane way possible. And the best way we've decided is, apart from poisoning, which has a lot of adverse effects and side effects and bycatch, as it were, so the actual physical trapping of the house crow seems to work the best. But you spoke earlier about the intelligence of these crows. Is it true that house crows can actually learn what the traps look like, and they can learn to avoid the areas where the traps are?
Yes, they are. If you remember, people thought the second IQ creature after human being is aphids, these primates, and you are wrong. The second is crow. Crow, they can learn to use a tool for other business. And then there have been some studies in America show that crow can now start imitating human voice. He can go same like the parrots the way he do. So look how general in the brain catching and easy learners. They can learn things so fast. So house crow, they are very smart. So even in the methodology, the way we catch them, we advise people, once we set the traps, and then you should, and the traps crow should be killed at the night hours, because anything happens to their fellows, if they see their fellows in the traps, then a quick lane, there's that is not a place for feeding, it's a trap. Then we'll have another challenge to find out we can kill them. So to trap them. So they are so easy to learn things, especially when it's in a danger situation. They are very smart, intelligent birds.
Great. Okay. And how have you found the response from the hotel owners? I'll give you my account. When I was there in December 2019, like I mentioned, I found the house crows to be an absolute nuisance. They were stealing food off tables. You've spoken about the disease aspect as well. I didn't, before we had this discussion, I didn't actually approach the hotel manager about wanting to control their numbers. But how have you found the response from the hotel owners in Zanzibar about wanting to control the numbers of the house crows in the area?
The owners of hotel, they are willing to start the project. The thing now is since we just came up with the idea of the project, and then we had some COVID-19, and then the economic they got some economic threats in their pockets, so they can't decide at the moment. They need to wait until when they at the proper time, when the season of the guests start, because there are not so many people now traveling around, but they really want the project to happen. We went to the Walele and in the north Nungwi, in the north Zanzibar, Nung beaches, in the north beaches of Zanzibar, and then these people, they are willing to start. They say they just give a go ahead. Then later on, we had a problem of corona, and then they say no, we have to wait until we get settled. Then the other guy was so lucky. We went to him and talked to him. Mr. Nasolo is also in the northern. He said yes, I need it now, and good enough. We just give him a flame of the trap, and then he set it on his own pockets, which is we give it a go. So far, and then we raise money from our pockets, and then we managed to set another trap. So we so far have two. One is at the Mnalani Beach Cottage to Mr. Nasol, who's the owner of the Mnalani Beach Cottage in Nongwi, and then we have another one with us at the city center of Zanzibar, Stone Town.
Okay. And what have the numbers been like? How many crows have you managed to trap so far with those two traps? Have you an idea of that?
Mnalani ones, they just stopped because they said they need somebody to be employed so that you can operate the trap. So that you say no, it should be somebody to look after the trap. So they don't have time when the birds they're in the traps. Then in the waste management to take the birds, they don't know where. Then I have to inject money to employ somebody to look for the trap. The same story. We just set up the trap, and then we were just the other trap. We just it is in a shop. We just want to sell the traps to somebody or to give the. We don't have a space for it. We just set it, and then we keep it. If somebody interested, we can sell for him. Or if you will provide us a space somewhere, we can volunteer ourselves to start the progress. We really want to start. Fantastic.
Okay, so right now there's quite a strong partnership with yourself, with the waste management company, Jamila. We'll speak about it in a second. Local government on board as well because they want the environmental control, and with private partnerships as well with the hotels wanting to get on board to control these pests. No, we speak about the obvious disturbance, just to the guests and the health threats that these house crows pose. But what about how have you found this has impacted you and your ecotourism business and your tours that you've been running?
House crow, that being a very big threat. You do the birding in the big forest like Masingini. You find. In one bird, it's just mobbed by 10, 15 house crow. And then the bird, they are not flexible and free to enjoy this mother nature at their free atmosphere. They always try to dash into the bush and hide. And of which, so we miss those beautiful pictures. Normally we used to have them in previous time. Because the number now is high, and they understand these guys. They don't want other birds around. So whenever they see any birds try to perch in a tree, they have to push to mob that bird away. This is a very big threat in my tourism and eco-tours for me. And they really try to disturb the bird eggs, the bird nest. So all our natural habitats now are in a very big threat because of this Indian house crow.
Well, I think it's fantastic that that you're clearly so passionate about it, Andrew, and the impact that you're making. We know that this is not something that can only fall on your shoulders. This needs as many people to partner with you as possible. And anyone who's ever traveled to East Africa and experienced the joys of the wilderness there and the animals and the birds that can be found there should be really concerned about this, because this really puts all of that beauty and that natural biodiversity at threat with this introduced species of the house crow. So, with saying that, how can anyone listening to this podcast and hopefully this YouTube video as well, how can anyone get behind this project? How can they support this project, and what should they be doing? What do we need for this project?
We need, as I mentioned before, we need traps. We need 600 traps, but also, as I mentioned earlier, these are very intelligent birds. At the time when the time goes, they will learn about these traps. Then, especially when the number goes down, then we need some other pressure and some other methodology to apply so that we can make quick to take down the number. Then the bounty system can be very nice to apply out when the project is on the running. because the bound system, when you involve local communities, especially those ones running in a street looking for the recycling empty bottles. I know those guys, and the easy ones. If you announce to the medias, because these things also need the publication in the medias. You tell the people to bring live birds for $2.50. People, they can try to collect big numbers as much as they can, so that they know there's a daily bread. So in the other way, it's a win-win. We are controlling, but also we let other people get something out of it. So this would be the best way. So for me, out of the house crow traps, and then we also need to do some other approach for controlling these birds, and we use the bound system, which is giving the local community, we give them money, which is $2.50.
Fantastic. Okay, and if anyone is listening to this podcast and they want to link up with you and they want to come on a bird tour with you, because you're a fantastic bird guide, I can attest to that. You knew all of the birds and you knew where to find them, not only on Zanzibar but also the mainland of Tanzania, which is your bread and butter. How do people get in touch with you, and where can they find your follow your work?
I have my WhatsApp number, which you can directly contact me with a Tanzania code. Start with the +255 784 490 399. This is my WhatsApp number. I can repeat it again. It's a +255. That's the Tanzania code. Then 784 490 399. That is my direct WhatsApp number. But also I'm available in the Facebook. You can search me. You can search me. Bird watching Zanzibar, Tanzania, and you see the picture of Mask Bobby in my profile picture, and then you see me there. But also I have a website as well. It's tanzaniabirding.co.tz. You can also reach me through the Tanzania Birding, and you have my detail there. Fantastic. So the best dialectic go through my WhatsApp, and then further detail. I'll give you the further detail through my birding safari. It's one of the fantastic tailor-made tour that I arrange from the mainland to the islands. And the idea to connect those two, you can do birding and mainland. Still, you need to do the islands, because in the island of Zanzibar and Pemba, there's 4 endemic species. So to complete the whole thing together, then you have to do it the island as well. So Tanzania, it has 34 endemic species, and you get 30 in the mainland, and I have to get 4 to the islands, and you connect up. So it's not all about birding, but also for the wildlife tour as well.
Yes. Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time, Andrew. I'm sure we're going to hear from you again in terms of following up on this project and see how it's getting on. And like I said, to all the listeners out there, if anyone wants to get in touch with Andrew, I can highly recommend him as a local guide. You would be supporting the local economy by supporting Andrew. He knows his birds, he knows his animals, and you feel 100% safe and comfortable when you're with him. So I'd like to thank you, Andrew, for your time. And thank you to all the listeners. And until the next follow-up on this call, we look forward to chatting to you again.
Before say bye for you, maybe I will just make you a few communicating birds call. You are with me in Tanzania, and you have the bird in Tanzania. Most welcome.
Fantastic. That was excellent, Andrew. Thank you so much once again.
We are proud to be working in association with Wild Books to help get all the best birding resources into your hands at a great price. If you would like to support the Birding Life project and the resources that we are putting out, please click on the link in either the comment section of this podcast or in our social media posts. Your support helps us to improve and hopefully make a bigger impact. Be sure to head over to our website, www.thebirdinglife.com, and check out all the exciting resources that we have on our website, including our exciting forum section to connect you with the world of birding, birders, and exciting birds out there. Do not forget to follow The Birding Life on Instagram and Facebook. We really appreciate everyone that takes the time to interact with these accounts. Be sure to check out Birdlasser and download the app on either iOS or Android, and keep a life list while playing your part in social conservation, as well as Swarovski Optic, one of the world's leading producers of binoculars, and spotting scopes. So until next time, be blessed and happy birding.